Well, the world has been preoccupied by the Israel-Hamas war in the last fortnight or more, which has already killed 7,000 people on both sides. But what about the other war, the Russia-Ukraine war? For over a year and a half, the war in Ukraine has dominated global attention due to the bloody scenes after Russia's invasion. The Russian armed forces are pressing on. Moscow continues to bank on its military-industrial complex and recently tested its ability to deliver a massive retaliatory nuclear strike by land, sea and air as the global gaze shifted to Israel. Meanwhile, President Zelensky says a Russian drone attack on western Ukraine has likely targeted a nuclear power plant in his country. Ukrainians are wondering if the world has the attention or the resources to focus on two wars. A split in Western Europe, Western support for Kyiv is widening. And not to forget, the war in Ukraine has strained the already depleted weapons stockpiles of NATO allies. It has been more than 20 months since Moscow's forces invaded Ukraine. In the war zone, Russia is going all out to capture the East Ukrainian city of Avdiivka. There is heavy fighting near Kupiansk, and authorities in Kharkiv region are imposing mandatory evacuations of families from some localities. Russia has also intensified the shelling in Kherson. The first casualty of the Ukrainian counteroffensive was, well, wishful thinking, and any hope that Russian troops would abandon their trenches and flee has now ended by not consolidating its power in the right areas. The war-torn nation is reportedly struggling to achieve its main goal of cutting off Russian supply lines in southern Ukraine by damaging the bridge connecting Moscow and the Crimean Peninsula. Russia has increasingly tapped its Cold War arsenal, deploying tanks dating back all the way to the 1950s to replenish its early losses. But can such old weapons still perform well? Russia has thousands of tanks and has put many of them to use as stationary weapons in their defensive lines, including in Zaporizhia, where they proved effective. Relying on agents and collaborators, Moscow has been successful in repeatedly hitting Ukrainian military depots. Russia has stopped using battalion-sized tactical groups it has deployed early in the war and shifted to smaller units. While the Russian air forces have operated in relatively small numbers, it has modernized its stock of bombs to turn them into gliding weapons that have proven efficient. Russian engineers have shown prowess in building field fortifications and complex obstacles along the front line. The obstacles include concrete reinforced trenches and command bunkers, wire entanglements, ditches, anti-tank hedgehogs or dragon teeth, and complex minefields as well. Now, improved Russian electronic warfare systems have destroyed thousands of Ukrainian drones for a month, while they have also been able to intercept and decrypt Ukrainian tactical communication in real time. Russians have also learned to intercept the GPS-guided rockets fired by Western-supplied launchers like the US-made HIMARS. Other Russian improvements include better thermal camouflage for tanks and nimbler deployment of artillery into multiple positions, including the integration with drones to avoid losses. Russian forces have also been attacking Ukrainian artillery with munitions, drones that hover until they acquire a target. On the other hand, NATO members say Russia's war has backfired, with Finland having joined the alliance and Sweden awaiting formal entry. The policy shift ended decades of both Nordic nations' respective non-aligned status. However, Slovakia, Bulgaria and Hungary have stood out over the past year as particularly pro-Russia in their attitudes. Weapon shortages across Europe could force hard choices for Ukraine's allies. For more than a year, the United States and other NATO members have sent billions of dollars worth of weapons and equipment into Ukraine to help it fight back against Russia. But for many of the smaller NATO countries and even some of the larger ones, the war has strained already depleted weapons stockpiles. Some allies have sent all their reserve Soviet-era weaponry and are now waiting for US replacements. Now they face a dilemma. Do they keep sending stocks of weapons to Ukraine and potentially increase their own vulnerability to Russian attacks? Or do they hold back what's left to protect their homeland, risking the possibility that makes a Russian victory in Ukraine more likely? It's a tough calculation. Western allies say the war has broken the entire security architecture built patiently on the European continent over many decades, despite the US and allies' continued ambitious efforts to bolster the Ukrainians. There are no signs of an endgame in this war.